Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about Miss Tanya and how you, what are your qualifications? That's an easier question.
Okay. So I have a master's degree in counseling and human development. My bachelor's, my undergrad was in social work. I've been kind of in the field for 17 years, licensed for 5.
Mm. So you've been dealing with people's shit for 17 years.
Yeah, all their shit.
That's the easy way to put it, you
Yeah.
know? Um, and how has that journey gone? Is it fulfilling? Is there times? Because I know I've done, let me just tell you a little bit about me. You know, I was in the military for 3 years less than you've been doing this all together, right? So
Oh, no.
14.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, I knew that that wasn't my calling. I knew that it wasn't for ever. I did it a lot longer than I actually felt like doing it, right?
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So even doing it, I was good at it. That's what the conflicting part was, is because I was so good at it. But then I went to the post office after, right? Did a few restaurant jobs because I cook, and nothing felt good. Would you say along your journey that it's always felt right for you?
Mm. So therapy has always felt right for me. That very much so is my purpose, is my drive. Um, but the beginning of my career was working with foster children, and I did that for 10 years, well, 12. Um, that was rough. And I did it a lot longer just because I was afraid of the next step. So I did it longer than I wanted to. It was fulfilling, but it was very rough.
Mm, okay. So, like, what landed you in this profession early on?
Um, to be honest. So in undergrad, I was a bit of a partier. And I was pre-law. And I got to a point where I didn't want to have to defend somebody who I knew was guilty. And I was like, okay, I just want to get done. I just want to be done with college. What's the fastest way I can get out? And I fell into social work. That at the time was the fastest way to get my degree and be done for a while. So I did, like I said, I did that for almost 12 years. And in that time, I watched foster kids that had been through some shit and were hurting. I'm taking them to therapy. They're in there for like 15 minutes. They're not talking to them, but they're talking to me. And I was like, okay, I have to do something. I have to change the way that this looks, because there are a lot of hurting people out here that are not even given a chance to work through it. So that catapulted me back to school.
Miss Tanya, you say it fell in your lap. So when I think about therapists, right, to me, it feels like because it's so much work, it's
Hmm.
such a detailed scope uh, of practice. I would think that somebody grew up and either something happened to them to where they wanted to help save the world, so to speak,
Hmm.
or that it's just always been in you. Like for me, I didn't know as a little kid I liked to watch Ricky Lake, Arsenio Hall, Oprah.
Ricky Lake was the stuff, man.
Hey, listen, I used to watch those things not knowing why I hated cartoons. I hated cartoons.
Mm.
I never watched cartoons. Even to this day, I don't like cartoons. Everybody loves them. I never did, right? I didn't know why I liked that because I couldn't correlate what I do now back then as a kid.
Hmm.
And I began to love interviews. I love talk shows. I loved, but it never translated with anything I was doing in my life, right?
Hmm.
Except talking to people. So fast forward to today, I am so interested in every talk show, Jimmy Kimmel, anybody,
Hmm.
right? Because I'm watching the bigger platforms and how I can change the face of it and do my own thing with it, right?
Right. Right.
Market it correctly, all of those things. So when I hear your story, it's a little peculiar to me because it seems like you're just like shit, like me as a college student.
I
Man,
just
I just
want it
want to get
out.
these grades and get the hell out of here. I've had
Yeah.
enough, right? And that's dope because the honesty of it all is that, is it a passion for you now? for
Oh,
change?
absolutely. I think so. If I explain it wholly, I think God was making sure I was on a path I was supposed to be on.
Completely.
I was doing it my way, and it wasn't working out. And when the light bulb moment hit, everything fell into place to where I was supposed to be. And this is now like everything to me. So I have this, I have what you talked about. Like, I have the past that would lead me down the path to this. And I think God knew that. I just was trying to do it on my terms, and that didn't work out.
And here I am.
Exactly.
I personally defied everything God tried to show me long before.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? As Duncan says, mental health is so important, especially in kids these days. So much teen suicide and teen depression. God bless you for what you do and communicating with
Oh,
these kids. That's to you, I'm sure. So mental health, this is pretty much to me the center of you guys' future. The reason I did this show is because it's been heavy on my heart. Things have taken place not only close to home, but far and wide in the universe, where I'm watching people, like what was stated in the comments, suicide at a high rate, people committing heinous crimes and nobody knowing why until much later. There was a young lady, a mother, that had to call the police on her son because he was going to go shoot up, something. It's just always something where people are so unstable. And it seems like the world is moving so fast. Everybody's so concerned with self that
hmm,
the signs fall by the
yeah.
wayside of the everyday person that's struggling, because what's the main thing we say? Everybody going through something, you got to push through,
Hmm.
right? Well,
Hmm.
that's not enough for everybody, right? So if your mind is cloudy, for me, if your mind is cloudy, it will distort your decision making process. And sometimes it's even deeper than just making a decision, because a chemical imbalance may be there, you
Right.
know, so many other things that tie into it. And we're going to get into that now. Uh, I'm going to ask you this. Why is mental health important to you?
Oh, um, it is. So your brain is a muscle. And so my question would be, why is being healthy and going to the gym and working out important? Because it needs to be worked. And the thing is why a lot of kids are struggling. No, they're not being taught. They're not being taught conflict resolution. They're not being taught decision making skills. They're not being taught how to navigate this world other than what they see on social media. So to me, if nobody's having the conversation, if nobody's sitting down and listening to them and trying to understand how they see the world and then help them to apply tools that you already know as an adult, they're going to be ill equipped. So that's just kids. And honestly, I've now moved on to adults where I work now, and I'm seeing people my age that don't even know how to have simple conflict resolution tools. So where do you go to learn that? Mental
Right.
health.
Mental health. With that, have you seen that most of them, because I have this theory that once you don't know, once you can't, I'm going to say it the easiest way instead of the long way.
Hmm,
For me, I'm going to speak for myself.
okay.
The moment I couldn't reconcile my differences within myself, it turned to frustration and anger. Have you seen that in a lot of patients?
Oh my God, yeah. So, and the thing is that anger actually looks different in every person. So I've always had to ask clients or patients, what does anger look like in you? Because my anger doesn't, I don't punch holes in walls. That's not what my anger looks like, right? But this person over here physically feels this tingle in their hand, like they have to exert energy. And so their anger is that. Depression can look like anger. Anger can look like depression. If we don't address the struggle that we have in our mind, it is going to come out some way, whether that's anxiety, irritability, anger, depression, isolation. All of those things are because we can't figure it out on our own.
I think you remember me talking about how my favorite part is isolation, but
Uh-huh.
I had to learn in therapy that moderation was best, right?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So when I stated it, the first pod before I ever, seen you on the show, this is 3 years ago, I was pushing, yeah, isolate, get your mind back together, regroup, this, that, and the third. That was wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because some people self-destruct, they implode, so to speak. But for me, what I meant by isolation, I was meaning I take myself out of predicaments and people that put
Mm-hmm.
me in predicaments in
Mm-hmm.
order to get in a healthy environment. So that may mean only my mom and dad stop by.
Yeah.
You know, that may mean twice a week I go shoot pool to relieve pressure.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't telling people lock yourself up and let your thoughts deal with you,
Well,
right?
you were right in a sense. Okay. So I think probably what you meant more or less was that you were providing boundaries for your peace, boundaries for what you saw that you needed in the future. So isolation was ultimately like what you saw it as, but me, I'm saying, okay, you're implementing boundaries. These are healthy. These are things that you need to do to get on track. And so I guess like, yeah, isolation and moderation. I actually had a session today where we're actually, I'm telling him, hey, you need to be okay with slowing down. Quiet time. This guy's getting ready for retirement. It's time to learn how to slow down.
Yeah.
And I'm like pushing him to do some meditation or do some, like, what is something that you can do on your own that presents where you have to focus and you can't just jump to this, that, and the other, because you're going to have to teach yourself how to slow down.
Right.
And so in those times, isolation is great because we're preparing for a new chapter. And so I needed him to be okay in a quiet space. So it's good in certain situations.
So I have to speak to the good of it. Um, the good of it for me was that I'm actually okay being alone. Like
Facts. Me too.
I was the biggest partier. My boy Vines is in here. He was
Hmm.
he was stationed with me at one of my duty stations, became a brother of mine, right? He'll tell you I like to party. You know what I'm saying? 7 days a
Hmm.
week, I'm going somewhere. But when I get home, I don't want to kick it with nobody. And when I disappear, I want to stay disappeared.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I love my me time.
Yeah.
So to somebody else, it might look like, man, you in your own head too long. That's what's wrong
Hmm.
with you. But for
Hmm.
me, I like to think it over. I like to tell myself there's got to be a different perspective. Now let me go get back in the population and see what my feedback can be when I've spent too much me time. And I know my limit. That's the best
Yeah.
part. I
Yeah.
know my limit of when I've sat in my head too long.
Well, you're emotionally intelligent, but how many people have you met that can create that? There's not a
Uh,
lot of people that have it.
my mentors. That's it.
Yeah. There's not a lot of people that have it. A lot of people
Right.
don't know that there's a lot of things that some people see as unhealthy, but my first question before saying somebody is wrong, I think that's what they always assume that I'm going to say when they come to me. I always go, my first question is it impacting your daily functioning?
Mm.
And if so, how? Because if it's impacting your daily functioning, you've got to know that something's not on track there. So tell me
Ex-
where it's messing up.
Especially if your vices are taking control.
See? And that's my new kind of arena now. So I'm a substance use counselor, which I never saw myself being here. I always thought I was going to be with the kids, but that's kind of my new arena. And so, hence why my first question to them is, well, so how is it impacting your relationships? How is it impacting how you handle business? How is it impacting how you relate to people?
Mm.
And when they figure it out on their own when answering those questions, that it's not exactly what they're doing is not exactly helping them.
All right. So, Mr. Joe Beasy, blessings to you, brother. Well, first I'm gonna get to Miss Brittany. Miss Brittany says, yes, I've learned that when I need to isolate in some capacity and how to come out of it. She says she has balance. And I believe that's a healthy thing. But you're the therapist here tonight. Is that healthy?
It is healthy. I relate to you guys. So I'm a social person, but I require, and I don't know if it's because of my career, I'm gonna be honest, but I require some kind of shutdown time where I'm not answering anything. Like I'll answer my mama because she'll blow me up, but I'm not answering anything. I need to be able to shut down and take some time for myself, and not have to be the person that everybody's calling or leaning on. So I think it depends. Like I said, is it impacting your daily functioning in the way that you are relating to others? If it's not negatively impacting, then you're on the right path and it's okay for you to do what you're doing. But if you're isolating so that you can avoid problems that you're having or avoid a conflict you don't know how to resolve, if it's impacting negatively, you're not getting sleep, you're not eating well, you're not taking care of yourself, then that's a problem.
Yeah. So, Mr. Joe Beasy, he says, mental health is my biggest struggle now. PTSD and depression is real, and people need to take people more serious when they are asking for mental support. There's a big difference between mental support and financial support, but a lot of people look at both the same way and give judgmental advice when it's not needed. Glad you're speaking on this topic. Thank you, bro. Hey, blessings to you, Joe. Uh, I hope that you get the help you deserve, but listen, go get it. Go get the professional help.
Please, please
Don't wait
go get
another
it.
don't wait another day. Don't think about, what somebody's going to think about you. Uh there's help out there, literally outreach programs that'll get you to somebody, right?
Mhm.
So just as well as you can Google anything in the world, you can Google that help. And if need be, I can do the research with you, or I can get
I'll help
some
out.
information from Miss Tanya right
Yeah.
here. Inbox her, you know what I'm saying, if you need some information. But that's the reason we're here, to help. We're here to be a resource and to actually listen to you guys about the things. So now I'm gonna move on. These are some of the reasons that were given to me about why mental health is important: coping with stresses of life, being physically healthy, having good relationships, making meaningful contributions to our community, work productivity, and realizing your full potential. Your gift is important to the world, right?
Mhm.
If somebody's told you that you're not important to the world, they're lying to you. They just don't see how bright and how far you're gonna go just yet, because most people live in your current chapter. They never see far past.
Mhm.
It's rare that they see far past where you are. They just observe where you're at and figure that's all you got, right? But are people being conditioned, Miss Tanya? Do you think people are being conditioned to not speak outside the home about
Mm.
trauma they may have suffered?
This is a daily battle. Absolutely. And I think I think it was more in our generation. I'm not going to tell my age, but I'm an 80s baby. For sure you didn't speak about what's going on in your family outside of the home. There's probably plenty of times that things in my family could have had me pulled into foster care, I'm sure, but you didn't speak about anything outside of the home. The bigger part is culturally. There's more of this being talked about now in the African American culture and the Hispanic culture, where you definitely, one, you don't talk about feelings, and you don't talk about what happens outside of your home. Um, so that's making a huge barrier. Now that I'm seeing some folks in their 20s and 30s where we possibly they could have possibly been able to get through some heavy hitting stuff better, or more, were able to more well adjust had they had the opportunity to talk about it outside of their home. But they weren't allowed to. You're taught you don't speak about what happens inside your house. I mean, even in my house, you don't speak about what happened else, in your home outside of the home.
Okay, so if indeed that was a thing in your home, which we had that, what happens in the family stay in the family, right? And
Mhm.
you want to protect family members over strangers any day anyway. Some people, it's an unwritten law to, if daddy's a drunk and daddy hit mom last night, you shut your mouth and you go to
Mhm.
school and you function as if that's normal, right?
Right.
Until you become an adult and you're either the abuser or the one being abused, right?
Absolutely. Mhm.
So then you have to, once you find help, you find yourself in a space where you start to realize I should have never shut up about what was happening
Mhm.
with the adults in my home. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So now we're here. And as parents these days, we want our children to be open and honest. Like, tell me everything. Don't shut up about nothing. You know,
Right.
if it's happening to you, let me protect you. Right. So that shut up and don't talk about what happens at home. We gotta incorporate the point or the angle where it could split the family up.
Mhm.
It could potentially put somebody in jail or, you know, or
Well, and
worse.
there's a different problem then, because if a child speaks and something negatively happens, now there's guilt and shame
Hmm.
that comes. So even the folks that have possibly spoken up, they didn't get help for that after, and so now they're adults blaming themselves for something that adults did when they were a kid and they didn't have any control. So now you're going to have issues with control. Either you are overtly controlling or you seek for someone else to take control because that's too scary for you. So now you're just continuing a pattern that
Mm.
could have been avoided had there been help earlier.
Um, so the top four mental disorders that I could find was mood disorders such as depression or bipolar disorder, anxiety disorders, personality disorders, and psychotic disorders such as schizophrenia. You
Mhm.
mentioned something very interesting about the bipolar disorder in our community. And can you
Yeah.
expound on it for me, please?
Yeah, and I actually consulted with a therapist that in Chicago, an African American therapist, to see if like if it was really as widespread as I was seeing it to be, and eyes open, absolutely. What happens in African American culture is that oftentimes African Americans are diagnosed with bipolar disorder, not meeting the criteria. What happens is that old school therapist will hear them talk about them talking to God or seeing angels, things like this, and they assume that they're having hallucinations or they're having mania, not taking into account that there's a spiritual connection with their religious views, and that they're not manic and they're not having hallucinations. This is their spiritual beliefs, and there's no consideration for that. So oftentimes they are misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder and sometimes even schizophrenia because the doctors are insinuating that they're having hallucinations without taking into account that there's a spiritual uh, um, acculturation that goes along with that. And it's not what we as clinicians look at as true auditory or visual hallucinations.
So it's really a thing that they don't recognize who you're spiritually connected to.
You got to think there's still
Being,
a lot of old school therapists out there.
well, I would say that because religion of any kind has been around since the beginning of time.
Yeah, but there's
So how
in
is
this
that?
field, nobody in this field there's this like what do you call it, tunnel vision, and they go, okay, these are the symptoms listed, and this is the criteria, and there's no consideration to dig further to find out why this is listed as a symptom.
Mm,
There's just not enough digging, I guess you could say, to find out what do you mean when you say you're talking to God. Tell me about tell me about that. Tell me about how you grew up in church. Was that something that you experienced? And they don't dig. They just list off the symptoms.
that seems purposeful to me because they're trying to stay away from both being offensive and
Uh-huh.
downplaying, and
Mhm.
also the non-believers in whatever God
Yeah,
you pray.
they're so sensitive to hell no, I'm going to ask you all the things. My patients know. I'm like, you're going to tell me all the things. I'm going to ask you all the things. I don't care, appropriate or not, tell me, so that we can figure out what's going on here.
Mm,
Right. So there's just not enough digging.
mm,
And to be honest, I mean, it's proven African Americans get the lower end of the scale when it comes to medical treatment. It also happens to be the same when it comes to mental health, unfortunately. So a lot of the folks that I see, I tell them like, no, I'm here to hear all the things. I'm not diagnosing you on first session. It's not happening. I'm gonna get to know you. We're gonna figure out what's going on. You may walk out of here getting to talk to me, and I didn't give you any diagnosis
mm.
because you were just having a difficult damn time.
Right. For me, when I hear that, I'm more interested in the fact that you said you're willing to do the research and the time. You're
Yeah,
willing to put in the time. So that sounds like, I guess that's in any field. You got people that take pride in what they do, and then you got the ones that are there for the check,
yeah.
right?
Hmm.
For me, I want to applaud you early on and say thank you for your service to the people, and being here this evening to spread knowledge, because personally I've never talked to a therapist outside of being in therapy, right?
Yeah,
But it feels like home to talk to you as a person rather than, just your scope and your field
yeah.
of work. What causes mental disorders? I've got a few examples, and then I'll let you chime in, Miss Tanya. uh,
Hmm.
the causes of mental disorders are your genes and family history, your life experiences, such as stress or a history of abuse, especially if they happen in childhood. Also, there are biological factors, such as chemical imbalances in the brain, a traumatic brain injury, other known as TBI, uh, and a mother's exposure to viruses or toxic chemicals while pregnant.
Hmm.
So, all of those things, is there anything you want to expound on or speak to in that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget or are conditioned to think it's just life. Life is just happening. They and let me first say, I'm not one to tell you if something was traumatic or not. Okay. Prime example is tornadoes. I'll give you an example of that. So, seeing a lot of tornadoes here when my dad was stationed in Kansas, seeing a lot of tornadoes there, obviously, Tornado Alley. So, when a tornado comes to Tennessee, I'm not freaking out. It's whatever. I've seen a lot of them. But someone who hasn't experienced that, that can be a very traumatic experience. So, we could go to the same doctor, both say we've been in the same tornado, same outcome, but it wasn't a traumatic experience for me. It's something that I'm kind of used to. We can't just assume that someone's life is trauma, but we also have to pay attention to, are they ignoring that they were a victim in situations that they didn't have control, and it was not, we get it, it was not fair, and now they've taken those situations, it's skewed their view. We call it, like a trauma, your trauma lens. You see life through a trauma lens now. It depicts how you relate to others. It depicts your trust or lack thereof. It determines your self-esteem at times, your motivation to do things, your belief in yourself and others. So all of those things can be that. Having depression doesn't mean that you have the chemical imbalance. The depression can literally be life circumstances. I don't have to medicate you. Just coming to therapy and admitting that you're having a depressive episode doesn't mean that I gotta shove pills down your throat.
Mm,
That is for the folks that legitimately have what we call organic depression, and there's actually very few and far in between that actually have organic depression, where there is no cause, there is no trigger. It is only the chemical imbalance in the brain. I've only seen one in 17 years. That is truly, it was what we call organic depression. So there are ways to work through it and not have to take medication, but there's also people that genuinely need what we call it a helpmate. It's a helpmate. You still got to do the therapy, We're just wanting you to get the medication so that you could be stable enough to work through those things that have caused you instability.
Miss Kimmy says in the comments, my doctors tried to constantly diagnose me as bipolar when I'm not. I finally found the right one and got the correct diagnosis. Blessings to you. She says trauma can definitely do it. Miss Brittany says, I used to be untruthful on the patient health questionnaire because I felt shameful and embarrassed about my health. When I was finally honest, it was like a weight lifted off my shoulders. Well, Miss Brittany, to you, I say congratulations, because that's a
Absolutely.
big feat. It sounds small, but it's huge, because I remember my breakthroughs in therapy and I learned so much about me. I stopped pointing the finger at the world in therapy, right? So Miss Kimmy said, all my mental illness came from traumatic experiences. And we all go through them. Some people don't even know traumatic experiences because of the environment they came up in. It's their
Yeah.
norm.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even realize some people came to the military traumatically done in mentally. They
Yeah.
came in that way. So war just expounded on those issues. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? Not even knowing they were messed up prior to joining, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but it was their norm. So it was hard for them to admit to, damn, I've been through that. That was bad. I didn't know getting shot at every day was bad, or listen to gunshots at night. And it don't even got to be that extreme. It could just be your parents fought every single day. Never laid a hand on each other, but they argued and
Mm-hmm.
spewed out the worst type of words to each other daily, right? It could be that you watched the neighbor get stabbed. You know what I'm saying? Anything can trigger you and put you in a space to where now you're consistently defensive about it and you react in a terrible way to it, right? And it causes you to, I don't even know what normal is. I hate that word
Yeah, we
because
don't use it in therapy. We don't we despise the word normal, because who gets to determine what normal is? I call being healthy. What does being healthy need to look like? We don't
right.
say normal.
I like it. So I used to think therapy was for straight jacket people only, like the ones in the white straight jackets. I'm like, man, that that motherfucker right there need help, you know? And I used to think it was for them only until I got older, more mature, and started to experience things, right?
Hmm.
But do you feel people often tell themselves they're okay before the session even starts, or try to convince you in the
Oh,
first session, I don't need to be
thank
here?
you. Let me tell you something. So, before the job I'm at now, I worked in an inpatient psychiatric hospital for 4 years. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That included court order people. So you're damn right. Like they don't want to be there. They're court ordered to be there. They don't, they feel like if they just lie to me, they'll get out in their 72 hours. Nah, bruh. Like, you gonna have to tell me how we got here in the first damn place. You tell me everything's fine, it's gonna keep you here, because now I don't feel like you're safe to leave, because we haven't figured out how you ended up in a situation where either someone that's close to you or police felt like you were a danger. So, oh, they try all the time. They tried all the time, but I pretty much, after I was like that, like blunt, I was like, nah, bruh, you ain't going nowhere. That kind of just broke it for them. Like, when they knew I wasn't going to bullshit with them and I wasn't going to sit there and be rainbows and butterflies, it worked out. And then
That's dope.
usually I talk them into staying a little bit more so we can make sure they're good and that they wouldn't have to come back.
I'm sure some of them broke all the way down because of how much they've
Facts.
been cleaning up.
Yeah.
I mean, because I've sat in their seat. I remember the literally releasing everything I had pent up for over 10 years, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
longer with some stories. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And coming out of there, it was a drive home in silence, but pure
Yeah.
pure happiness though. Like, that was the shit I couldn't tell nobody. Or
Mm-hmm.
so I thought. Or so I thought. You
Right.
know, and it felt good. So a question for you, for the people. I feel like I'm doing a disservice to the people if I don't get into the mind of the wonderful therapist this evening. How do you maintain a heavy workload and leave the office at the office?
So that's a long answer. Let me preface this by saying I finally have my dream job, which has very great work-life balance, where it's 40 hours. That's it. My schedule is set, but it took me 17 years to get to it. So, um, I didn't for a long time. If y'all were here at the beginning where I said I worked with kids for about 12 years, man, I would work 60-hour work weeks on call 24/7. Even on vacation, I was getting phone calls and having to answer emails. I didn't create a good work-life balance. To be honest, what I guess brought the work-life balance was when I had my son. And I realized that it wasn't fair for me to constantly be there for everyone else's child, and my child is having to stay at grandma's house because I'm overworking. So I had to learn how to set boundaries to say, I'll still be here. If you're in crisis, give me a call. We'll talk about it. But you have to start using your skills. You have to start preparing yourself. So I started preparing them better to be what we call autonomous. I had to, and that was a good lesson for me as a case manager, as a clinician now, is to teach them how to do it when I'm not there. So it took me a long time. So now where I'm at, it's very regimented schedule wise. I see 7 people a day. I do the notes sometimes even during the session because I'll tell them, hey, I want to make sure I have this in here right. Let me put this down. And then, or that little break between sessions, I go ahead and type it out. I just make sure I put what's necessary, as in like clinical language, what we worked on. Like I might say that this person worked on utilizing radical acceptance or something small that is going to let them know we did clinical work, but not tell everything going on.
All right. So how do you turn it off when you get home?
For me, it's a mom switch. That's what I said. Like, I think
So it's
bringing my
pretty
son
much
into the
really
world,
just your son.
it's really just my son that put that in there, because, and I suffered a lot because I didn't have this separation.
Mm.
So I can't say how others do it, but it literally, I imagine, like I visualize a light switch. And when I hit that door, I turn the light switch off. Therapist Tanya is gone.
Mm.
Even if my friends call me, they're probably not likely to get therapist Tanya advice. They're going to get friend Tanya. And I'll tell them,
Mm.
hey, if you want therapist Tanya advice, you're going to call me tomorrow. I ain't
Right.
got it.
Right. I
Tanya
ain't
advice
got
is
it.
all you're going to get, and you might end up in jail. So it's
I
like
got
I
girl. I got
visualize
me a girl. I got me a glass of wine. I'm not trying to be a therapist right
facts. Like
now.
therapist is turned off for the evening. I am reset to factory settings.
Ain't nothing wrong with that. So,
Mm.
in your opinion, should therapists have therapists to remain objective and unbiased?
They'll never be unbiased. Let me be honest with you. Just as humans, we have even blind biases that we don't realize or recognize. Even when we're trying our hardest to not have a biases, that first thought will come, and you have to be cognizant enough to look at it and say, "Am I being biased? Am I um, attaching something that I know to this situation or this person because they're reminding me of something?" But we'll never be fully unbiased. But we were taught even in grad school, like you've got to work on your shit. Like therapists have to have therapists. Um, I know, Jermaine, you asked me before, did I take that advice? It took me a long time. I had worked through it 10 years ago, right? All the traumas I had in my childhood, I worked through that. That was good. The problem is I had to work on my biases. Because when I first started, I said, I do not want to do therapists or do therapy with murderers or rapists.
Why?
That was my bias. Like, I just didn't want to. I was like, oh, no, I can't. There's no way I could do it.
I'm saying, was it fear or was it disgust or
It
both?
was a trauma. The rapist part was a trauma. So
Mhm.
that was trauma based. I didn't want to be brought back into a place I was like, I healed from that, but I'm scared that that might be too close. And then murder was fear. I ain't gonna lie to you, but in my first year as a therapist, I'll be damned if I didn't have both. And they were kids, and I had both. And I had to challenge myself, like, hold up, these are kids. These are somebody's babies. These are kids. Like, they still made poor decisions, but like, that rapist was raped himself 50 times over. That murderer, was put in a position that he feared for his life. Yeah, he was fucking up and doing a robbery, but he feared for his life, right? They're still humans at the end of the damn day. And I had to deal with that. And I'll tell you this, I'll never say I won't treat anyone again, because God will say, yeah, right. Hold my
Right.
beer.
I didn't put you in this position to be idle.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
how does this line of work affect your love life relationships?
I don't, I told you I didn't want to answer this one.
Hey, we got to talk. This is talk heavy sessions.
So, you ever hear the phrase that therapists have the most fucked up lives?
I've never heard that phrase.
Okay. In our world, we kind of say it, and I'm not saying everybody. I'm not stereotyping every therapist, but
Yeah, naturally, this is based off your opinion.
yeah, we are so focused on helping that we tend to attract romantically people that are in need of help. And then we get so caught up in that, right? But then we get frustrated, like, hey, like, I don't want to have to be the only one, getting this together. Like, why do I always have to help? And then you get resentful. So I've had to take a break, because I'm like, shit, I am attracting. They look good on the surface, and then when you start getting there, you're like, fuck, man, damn it, why I gotta help you too? And it's not always financial. It's not, there's different levels to it, but we attract that because that's our soul, that's our spirit that comes out there to say, like, I just want to help. And that's what we tend to attract. And so that's something I'm having to work on, so I don't keep attracting that same kind.
This is what I will say to you in that area, my opinion. Man, your nurturing spirit was God's gift.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
I don't think it has anything to do with your line of work. It helps. But your nurturing spirit will always attract men that don't have it all together.
Right.
I myself, I'm striving to have it all together, but I know that's just being perfect and I'll never reach that level. But the notion that I believe it keeps me in good standing with God. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think you'll ever stop attracting men that need help. What I think needs to happen is better communication in the beginning.
Oh, for sure. That's what I was saying. Like, that's where I'm working on it.
Yeah. So
paying attention.
Who you attract, I think you're attracting great. Everybody, you can't pick a man that don't need help with something.
That's true. And I'm not saying that they don't need help, but when I tell you it's help, it's help.
Listen, we need y'all.
Yeah.
In our life. For heterosexual men, I'm only speaking from that frame because that's who I am. We need y'all, right? I need you to tell me I'm being overbearing. I need you to tell me my aggression level is too high for a situation too low for me to pay attention to. We suffer in silence for so long, and then when we meet a good woman, they're like, "Hey, relax. You can handle that."
Yeah.
I've watched you handle so much more in a smaller period of time. Sometimes we need to hear that, right? But a well-balanced man won't push you over the limit. He'll understand that, hey, listen, I've asked for a lot this week. And I've been stressed out. True. Tell me if you need some me time. Tell me if I'm saying too much or I'm asking. Tell me if you need to turn your brain off for a minute. That's a good communicator.
Yeah. And that's what I'm running into is the ones that don't want to allow me to turn it off. That don't want to allow me that space to get what I need, some me time or some girl time or whatever. That's been the problem, is it's woo suffocating.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
so I can see how you need to rearrange some of your picker skills.
Yeah. My
However,
picker's a little off.
well, I won't even say it's a little off. Sometimes the guy might be a good guy and he just needs some fine tuning.
Yeah.
You know, needs some fine tuning, but there's a limit on that.
Mm-hmm.
We always got to draw the line in that sand. Even for me, I'm a very giving person, right? But there's a line to that.
Yeah.
You know, I have a line in
Mm-hmm.
everything. I like to service my woman to full capacity. However, if I had one, if I was in a relationship, a fully committed relationship, she had no problem with me servicing her. But sometimes I need you to go away. But I need to find a better way to say it. You
Yeah.
see what I'm saying?
See, I always think about the Cat Williams stand up where he was saying, "Stop saying all men ain't shit. What is it about you that keep attracting ain't shit men?" And so I have to look at, like, what is it about me that keeps attracting the suffocators?
I've met women that just want to manipulate. I had to figure out why I was
Exactly.
literally attracting the ones that just wanted to sneak and creep until I realized I just came from a life of that. I can't expect to get all the way. That stench is still on me because this is who I
Mm,
was dealing with.
mm.